An integer variable contains a whole number, that is, a number with no decimal places. String and integer variables make up the majority of variables in most ASP.NET applications. To begin this lesson, open the Shining Stone sample file from your Sample Files folder. And open the code behind file of buy.aspx. We are now going to create an integer variable. To do this, add the following code to the page load event handler. Int testInt equals 10 response.write testInt. This code creates a new int variable called testInt with a value of 10 and writes it to the page. Note that along with int, there are two other integer variable types called short and long. Much like string variables, the int variable types have alternative names in the .NET framework, which mean exactly the same thing. The alternative name of the int type is int32. An int32 is a 32-bit integer. This means that an int32 or int variable can hold a number from -2,147,483,647 to +2,147,483,647, and it takes up 32 bits of memory. Short and long variables correspond to the names of int16 and int64. An int16 variable can hold a number from -32,767 to +32,767. An int64 variable can hold extremely large numbers, above 9 quintillion. That's 9 followed by 18 zeros. If you found your integers were using too much memory, you would probably convert them to short variables if you knew that they would never exceed 32,767. Long variables are useful on the rare occasions when you need to work with numbers greater than 2 billion. General practice is to use int variables for all integer variables, and only to change them to short or long if it becomes necessary. View the page in your browser now. You can see the number displayed at the top of the page when the page loads. Close your browser. Because C# understands that the int variable is a number rather than a piece of text, you can perform mathematical operations with it, such as adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. Add the following line of code before the response.write line. TestInt equals TestInt plus 5. This code will add 5 to the value of the TestInt variable. View the page in your browser, and this time you can see that 15 is displayed on the page. That is the sum of 10 plus 5. Close your web browser now. Some properties of controls are also integers, such as the selected index property of a drop-down list control. We're going to retrieve the selected index property of the country drop-down and put it into the TestInt variable. Add a new line of code before the response.write line, and add the following code. TestInt equals drop-down list country dot selected index. View the page in your browser and complete the form, making sure to choose a country from the drop-down list. Click Submit Order, and you can see the index value for the country you selected displayed at the top of the page. Try changing the country in the drop-down list, and click Submit Order again. As you can see, the index number changes. In a real-world web application, you'd usually use the Selected Value property instead of the Selected Index property to identify a user's drop-down choice. To keep things simple, we didn't use the Selected Value property because it is a string rather than an integer. Close your web browser now. Note that much like strings, you can create an empty integer variable, such as int testInt. Unlike a string, however, testInt will actually be given the value of 0, rather than being null. The same is true of short and long variables. Normal integer variables can never be set to null, but you can create nullable versions of them if you need to. You'll learn more about null and nullable variables in Lesson 5.12. Remove all code from the page load event handler now. You've now completed Lesson 5.4. Use integer variables.